Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages, and to everyone out there listening. I welcome you to the Age of the Mage podcast, and this is episode 20. And we're going to continue today with some more explanations about the Immortal Soul Lines. In episode 18, I went over the general introduction to what the Immortal Soul Lines are. And in the last episode, episode 19, we recapped a little, and then we expanded on 3 of those soul lines. So today we're going to cover the other 4. And again, we'll start with a brief recap because I know some people listening were not even aware of the podcast previously. So this is your first time hearing about these things. And what these immortal soul lines really mean to us is that we as incarnated humans on Earth not only have physical DNA running through our systems that we've inherited from physical 3D family members, but I believe we have spiritual DNA as well, and that we have acquired that and those unique markers due to our own soul's journey through time and space and different realms and different dimensions. I believe we've have a natural, our souls, when they emerge and when they're born, they have natural inclinations. They have their own patterns and their own vibrations, just like we all have here on Earth. And our soul gravitates to things that it wants to accumulate. You know, it's magnetized by similar things of affinity that it likes and wants to learn about. And so we find our soul journeying through various types of incarnations and spending time and being in the midst of other beings and other places that support our soul's natural interests and natural abilities. And over time, this accumulates and accumulates. And so pretty soon you really have a spiritual lineage to look back on, just as if you were doing your earthly genealogy. I know it's complex and it may sound like a strange concept to those of you just hearing about it. But if you stick with this for a minute, you can at the very least have some fun with this, and it will provide some insight into yourself as a magical practitioner or a spiritual worker of some sort, because this really provides the exercise and the space to look at yourself through a different lens. And what we're working towards here is building our own magical persona. And we're going to go into details about why that's important in a future podcast. But that's part of this work we're going to do together on this etheric network to strengthen ourselves as individuals and also know how to connect with others on the network when the time comes to team up for some work. So we're going to address these 7 soul lines. Now, what happens that I have found is that these energies come into our physical bodies and coordinate with our chakra system, the basic chakra system, the 7 chakra vortices that we're all aware of. And I know there are additional chakras, but the ones we're going to deal with are the 7 that are most closely incorporated into the physical body. And each of these lines has their own gifts, their own talents, their own kind of flavor of energy. And of course, the human is so complex that I don't intend to pigeonhole any of us into just one small space. Many of us have a lot of these traits. But usually, if you really dive in and listen to more information about these 7 soul lines, you will identify yourself as being primarily 1, possibly 2, in some cases 3. And you'll know those are very dominant in your life. And that's how you'll find this is how you approach your magical work. And this is why these soul lines kind of explain the motivation why you're even interested in magic and how you want to use it at a soul level. And that's another real advantage we can get as individuals by studying these soul lines is we can know thyself, know ourselves a bit better and find out, hey, I didn't realize it, but that is why I want to do these things. That is why. That's what's pushing me. That's what my drive is. And so that will help too. These identifying your soul line will help you know what motivates you. And that is a powerful thing, because then you can design your spiritual practice or magical work according to the way that you're most interested in. Not everybody doesn't fit into one box here. We're all very unique. So the 7 soul lines, just briefly, start at the root chakra, and we call that the immortal vampire line. We move up to the sacral chakra, which is the second one, and that is we call that the eternal artisan line. And the third one up is in the solar plexus area, and that we refer to as the honored healer. They're the physical healers. And we covered those 3 chakras in the prior episode, episode 19. So please feel free to go back and listen to those if you are interested in learning about each of these soul lines. All right, so today we're going to cover the remaining 4. We move up to the heart center chakra, and that we call the Beloved Priest and Priestess line. The next one up, we move into the throat chakra area, and that we refer to as the Visionary Messenger. Next, we move up to the third eye, and that is the brow chakra, the 6th chakra, and we call that the Mystical Shaman. And then the top crown chakra, we align that with the Magi Alchemist. So let's drop back down for a minute and go to the 4th chakra, which centers at the heart area. And again, we call this the Beloved Priest and Priestess. And one of the reasons why that name is so apt for this particular soul line is this soul line just encompasses the archetype of Christ, someone who came to heal and soothe and take on others' pain so that they could rise. And he was willing to do that. And then Buddha and some of the other great avatars who have been so willing to come and love us all so much as a human race that they are willing to pay great prices for just to have the opportunity to help us and maybe leave us with some wisdom and leave us with even grace and magic and spirit and soul that we need so that we can continue our soul's evolution, and the evolution of our species can continue by heeding the words and the actions and advice of these great, almost divine beings that have been among us. So this heart center is very critical to the human species because it balances the energies from below, which are very physical and practical sometimes, and concerned about the 3D world, and that's very appropriate. Nothing wrong with that. And then it also brings a bridge to all those kinds of energies, to the above energies of mental work, inspiration, and the higher realms perhaps that even go beyond the 3D world. And so this heart center really brings these 2 different types of existence together. And how this manifests, I think, in the human is through emotion. And this heart center really holds the space for a very wide variety of emotion. And from emotion, we derive our goals, our wishes. We get our desires. Our emotion is really what puts us on our tracks, on our paths, much more than we would suspect. And so this heart center is very active, even when we don't suspect it is very active in guiding us through our incarnation here. And so we find that those with a lot of energy swirling around this center, we call them the priest and priestess, and we find that they are dedicated to emotionally healing others. They are able to sit with others, listen to them, and hold the space for emotions and distress and despair and even sometimes happiness and overflowing joy, they can hold a space so that others can share those feelings with them. And as people empty out those feelings that sometimes have been bottled up or they've been in resistance to sharing, it becomes the first step to that person's healing. As they share their experiences, the priest and priestess, so willing to hear and listen without any judgment, gives these people the opportunity to take their first steps towards healing. And it also can release blocks. Now, the magic and the spirit that's involved with the soul line of the priest and priestess is they seem to have a special gift for this. All of us do this from time to time, of course. With our loved ones and our friends, we have all provided times with a listening ear. But the priest and priestess will find that it happens far more frequently in their lives. Complete strangers will come up to them and suddenly be telling them some of their deepest, darkest life secrets and moments, and tears will fall. And this is the gift the priest and priestess seems to convey to others, that it's safe. I am a safe zone. You can tell me what you need to say. There is a great kindness and a great deal of compassion in the healthy priest and priestess that allows for this. And then they go a step further and they learn, sometimes through maybe not so healthy of ways, but eventually the priest and priestess can learn to channel actual healing energy to those that are seeking help, much like the physical healers do with things that are troubling people in the physical plane in their bodies. The priest and priestess does this through an emotional connection. And it can involve thoughts, it can involve mental healing, emotional healing, and psychological healing. And the priest and priestess, as they learn what their skills, what they really have to offer people, these can become far more refined so that it doesn't drain the priest or priestess to do this. And they can actually just channel the types of energies they know the person talking to them or sharing with them needs to have, needs to be given in order to perpetuate their healing and keep it going. So this is a remarkable energy center. Now it has some of the same warnings maybe that could be attached to it as the healer just below. And that is because the priest and priestess is here to have such great empathy with others and care so much and carry the depth of compassion that they do carry. They're very often empaths. And we all know some of the downside of being an empath. We tend to not have the best of boundaries. And until we learn how to navigate our natural empathy, we can go out and just be bombarded with other people's feelings and just feel extremely drained. We could try to help one person and maybe not be able to get out of bed for a week and not quite understand what happened and why. And this is that leaking of energy that occurs for healers in general. Not only do we get energy coming in at us, crying for help, and the empath and the telepath really is aware of this, but we also tend to give too much out of our own energy, before we learn the proper ways to channel energy from higher dimensions so that our own does not become depleted. So that's probably the number one challenge for the priest and priestess line, along also with maybe not taking enough time for themselves. There is such a draw to help others, and there's so much natural good feelings when that happens, because in each case of the soul line, of all the soul lines, when you are fulfilling your purpose and you are living out your soul line's gifts, you're actually, it's a wonderful win-win cycle, because you actually start to thrive and feel better too. There's something inside of you that knows you're aligned and knows you're on track, knows you are on your destiny, that you're walking your destiny's path. And this is very rewarding, but at the same time, we can overdo it. And I think this shows up a lot in the two healer lines and the priest and priestess, because you don't know when to say no It's like so hard because you feel the pain that is existing in those that are seeking your help, and you truly, truly want to help. So these are a couple lessons that we'll work with when we do exercises specific to the priest or priestess. But overall, this is a marvelous, wonderful soul line, just like all the others. And it is associated with the color green. So refreshing, healing surroundings that remind the priest and priestess of the evergreen growth of perpetual life, that life will go on and that it's peaceful and it's okay. These types of environments and these types of reminders will greatly soothe the priest and priestess line. All right, let's move up to the throat center, the fifth chakra. A lot of people refer to this as the chakra of willpower, and it is where speech comes. And sometimes our ability to speak out and how much we speak out in our own truth can let others know how much willpower we truly do have. So it's understandable why this center is often linked to willpower. We call this for the soul line that's affiliated with this chakra, we call it the visionary messenger soul line. And so I'm sure that that's pretty self-explanatory, but let's go into it a little bit. So what this messenger does and is gifted with is just often from very early days, the messenger is receiving messages from other realms. And many of us have this happen. Many of us experience dreams. We have visions. We have daydreams that we think are just our imagination, but may very well be coming to us from either our higher self or other multidimensional, interdimensional sources. So this happens to all of us. But for the messenger line, it happens in such a way that the messenger wants to bring back that message or transmit that message to others. And this is this kind of almost compulsion to be doing this. So you see channelers with this particular soul line very strong. We see mediums who communicate with those who have passed on and want to help their relatives feel better and want to pass the messages they receive on to them. We see this in those that are receiving telepathic communications. This is going on in mass right now with the galactic star seeds, those and other hybrids that are here and have connections to beings and races and species that want the best for humanity and are in alliance with those that want to help us achieve the most benevolent and beneficial timeline for our race and for our planet. They are just speaking up, and they are definitely communicating through those that are here, that are part of their soul families, that are incarnated at this time for that very reason, to serve as messengers, to serve as emissaries and liaisons between these planets or other dimensions and us here on the earth at this time in our physical dimension. So we see those kind of messengers. And the messenger will feel compelled. They want to share what they have seen or heard or been told with another person at the very least, maybe someone they can trust. As confidence builds in the messenger, gradually they are willing to expand their audience. There can be resistance because, of course, all these things don't have, over the past several years, some of us have been discredited or ridiculed for our beliefs in these types of things. And this can cause us to resist our gifts. And I think I have seen this kind of resistance that is partially based on fear, coming through mostly maybe in the messenger line and possibly the physical healer line. And for very different reasons. The physical healer can resist their gift because of total drainage that occurs for them. And they link some of their healing experiences with very big downtimes for themselves. And of course, that can produce a resistance. For the visionary messenger, that resistance shows up as more a fear of ridicule. It's you have to be so vulnerable when you put your messages out for others to hear, because of course they can tear those messages apart and they can link them to you and attack the messenger personally. And this is an age old, this has gone on forever, hence we get the words don't kill the messenger, things like this, because messengers have had to carry the responsibility throughout time of some very inconvenient messages, things people didn't want to hear. We see prophets would fall into this category, and we're all familiar with how well prophets have been listened to, and how much persecution uh, various messengers have undergone in order to share their message with people. So this is an old, this is an old archetype that brings the envelope of resistance with it. But when the messenger can gain enough confidence and receive enough support from maybe his or her physical family or friends, but also those beings that are in communication with the messenger, that resistance will start to slip away. And the faith and the confidence that builds for the messenger will start showing up. And again, it becomes a marvelous cycle upwards in growth and evolution for the visionary messenger. And it is directly connected to the calling of the messenger to not only be able to go into the realms and see and hear and receive these messages, but to bring them back to us. And this sets it apart from all the rest of us who obviously receive messages and have access to other realms through various means. We don't all feel compelled to share those messages. We might journal them, we might tell those we trust the most, but to feel like, oh, I've got to get this message out to the world, that is not for all of us to do. That is not inherent to our innate callings and purposes. And so we will not all feel that drive like the visionary messenger will. Their oracles fall into this category, people who give tarot readings. Often the astrologers have strong messenger lines. Anyone who connects with the public based on systems of divination or any kind of extra dimensional contact falls into has very strong soul lineage with visionary messenger. All right, and that color is the royal blue. And so we see stones like sodalite and lapis being very good for the throat centers. And sometimes this might help messengers who are in resistance to speaking. And of course, they can also be writers, bloggers, video makers, any type of medium that is conveying their message out to someone else is appropriate for the visionary messenger. All right, let's move up to the sixth chakra, the brow chakra, which we affiliate with the mystical shaman. Many of you are familiar, with shamanism, and you're even beyond, if you practice shamanism or consider yourself a shaman or have close associates in this area, you are going to be far and away more of an expert about all of it than I can be. So I will share some general things that I have found people tend to relate to me that eventually tell me, yes, I am falling into the mystical shaman soul line. And I'm just going to share those things that I do know often appear in conjunction with this soul line. And one of the most common is dreams. When you have someone that is really, even from childhood, coming out, Mom, I want to tell you the dream I had last night. Or you have a family that has a history of dreaming and sharing those dreams with each other, what happens is you have a respect for dreams. That person, when they wish to convey dreams, what they really are revealing is, hey, something important happened to me and I want to tell you about it. Now, this respect for the dreaming and for the dream state, we don't all have. We're fascinated with dreams. We don't understand sleep states. Like we keep, researching them and learning more about them as years go by. But we're just not compelled to analyze and talk about and revisit our dreams as much as those with strong shaman bloodlines or soul lines may be. Now, that's not to say that any of us couldn't have a remarkable dream now and then that really affects our lives and sticks in our minds and we share over the years with others, because that whole dream world is available to all of us, and it will be part of our lives in some way as the years go by. But for the shaman of soul line, it is a very central part of life, and usually from very early on. And this is because working in the dream state is one of the ways the shaman actually works. They are called to be basically multidimensional travelers. And as they develop their gifts, not only do they do they gain the capacity for lucid dreams and lucid dreaming states, but they learn things like astral projection. They know how to leave their body. They know which one of their etheric bodies they can take to certain dimensions, and they become quite expert in crossing time and space, and just ignoring the time space continuum and going anywhere they need to go to do their work. This is their shining star. This is where they excel, is all this multidimensional travel. And they each have different specialties that attracts them. Some shaman are very drawn to healing, and they might acquire physical healing skills from information they gather as they do this travel. They might have skills in soul retrieval and healing people at very deep levels, at the soul and spirit levels, as a result of their work in these dimensions. They might also, so they have this draw to different types of healing. They might also share some of the priestess abilities with emotional and psychological healing. Other shaman are very interested in warrior-like activities. They are willing to go into the darkness, a bit like the vampire does. They're willing to go into dark places and fight nasty things in order to help clear space for light to shine, things like that. So there's just a myriad of ways the shaman can choose to operate and choose to use the skills that the shaman gains through their journeying. And so we can't really determine, oh, all shaman do such and such. It's a bit more complex than that. But what they do have in common is the way they access their information, the way they acquire their wisdom, and the way they hone their skills. This is done through multidimensional travel work. Another thing shamans tend to have in common are bonds with animals. And very often they will report animals in their dreams. And these become very important to them. The power animal, the totem, the spirit animal. Sometimes they have their own guardian and companion that walks with them for their entire life, especially during their multidimensional travels. Other times they use teams of different types of animals to help them in different types of situations. So there is a deep bond with the shaman and the animal, the nature, animals in nature, even from our based usually maybe on our 3D world. In other words, not so much creatures that they don't identify, but shaman are drawn to the earth natural paths. And so they find great comfort in familiar animals that we have here on earth, working with those animal spirits in the other dimensions, the ones they can identify for certain characteristics that they need to help compensate for things they need to bring to the experience. So that that is in a kind of in a nutshell, I think, what shaman have reported to me over and over, these commonalities. And in in if we can spot any weakness in the shaman, they have such a drive to work within these other dimensions and other spaces that they often are drawn to drugs that will help them get into altered states. They also may tend to overdo it when they're there and come back very weak. They sometimes split their bodies, and I don't mean their physical, although they might be able to also do bilocation and things like that. But in general, I'm talking about splitting their more spiritual bodies and their etheric bodies. They may drain them by doing too much at once, going to more than one place at one time, these types of things. And so they could come back and face exhaustion. And the other thing is they need a very strong base, a very strong foundation, because if you're going to travel through all kinds of unknown spaces and places, and you could be attacked, you could be manipulated. I mean, so many forces that you do not know about when you first begin these journeys can affect you, that you really need top shielding techniques. You need the foundation of your beliefs to return to so that you have a base of operations and are not just pulled apart by conflicting and these dichotomies that are going to hit you in philosophy and ideas and everything all at once. And the shaman really needs a lot of work and help with their grounding techniques so that they are not pulled apart by these forces and that they're able to maintain their own central core in the course of them fulfilling their destinies. And I think that's one reason why the shaman is linked on the earth side of things with so many earth based religious tools. We see drums, we see nature, we see fire, we see chanting, these kinds of things to keep the shaman, give the shaman ways to stay connected to the body, which is very important. So it's kind of a paradox because here's the shaman, heading out as far as they can go from the physical body. And at the same time, they are the ones that may need more than any of the soul lines, the reminder of the physical body being important to them and that it will help them. It's in kind of this opposite juxtaposition, this way that the physical will actually help them achieve their non-physical goals. All right, so that's a little recap of the shaman. And the color that's associated with the sixth chakra is indigo, which is such a dark, dark blue that it almost goes into a purple. And it is a stone or a color that really does convey some of this energy of the shaman because it morphs between the dark blue and that deep dark purple. And sometimes you don't know which you're looking at. And this is appropriate for the shaman who is going to morph between his physical state and his, you know, multidimensional, expansive states. And so it's an appropriate color for that particular soul line and chakra. All right, let's end with our seventh chakra, the crown chakra, right on top of the head. And we associate this with the Magi Alchemist soul line. And because it is so centered at the head, now it does form that bridge to the very next center, just above the physical body, which is mental and begins to take on etheric form. So it obviously is a bridge between the physical brain centers, if you will, and the mental sphere that surrounds that's invisible. All right, but we tend to we we see that this center tends to attract people or people that fall into this soul line are very mental usually. They're interested in mental pursuits. They're interested in intellectual forays and research. Now, this doesn't mean that the person has to have a formal education by any means, no. This is just someone who trusts magical systems that they can study about or learn about. You know, the typical types of magic, the Harry Potter school, where experts teach the apprentice what to do because it has been proven over time and it can be replicated and it works, and there is a tradition behind it that can be researched and can be expanded upon. This is very appealing to the Magi Alchemist. There's a tendency to for this magical practitioner or spiritual person, there's a tendency for them to like to read, to like to get information from someone who has been on the path before, accumulate this information and put it into practice. They like to record their practice, and they like to journal and collect information for their Book of Shadows and their grimoires, these types of things, because they love analysis, the Magi Alchemist. And so all these endeavors and pursuits support their confidence in their work. And also we find that the Magi Alchemist is very drawn to certain types of ritual. Now, this can be true in all the cases because we all form habits and we all design mini rituals, if you will, as well as longer rituals that will help us replicate the results we want when we go and try to, practice our skills. But for the Magi Alchemist, this becomes even more apparent. Maybe even more elaborate rituals that have been handed down through time, those kinds of calls, sigils, things that have been shared within the walls of mystery schools throughout time. These are paths to the type of magic that the Magi Alchemist excels at and really finds rewarding. Now, what's so interesting about the Magi is they're the crown chakra, they're at the very top. So you would think, oh, it's all mental, and a lot of it is mentally done. All right, I've got to get back to that. But they also have a parallel with the root chakra, the vampire, because both of them are very concerned with manifestation. So the vampire uses physical elements to achieve the manifestation that they want to achieve. The Magi uses mental elements to manifest. And so it has this in common, interestingly enough, with the most grounded of the centers. And so we have these brilliant Magi who throughout time have shared their knowledge with us and given us so many insights into why magic works, why prayer works, why they lead right into quantum mechanics, many of these principles that we're now finding through science, which again, the Magi may be very drawn to scientific principles backing up his or her magical practice. But we're finding out that they all intertwine, don't they? And the Magi has gifted us with ways that we can all access to create the manifestations that we want for our own lives. So this is where you would find spells. This is where you find written rituals, things that can be shared from a tradition of Magi and alchemists. Now, not only is there a promise of manifestation of some sort that comes through the magical working or the prayer work or the meditation or visualization, but there's also the great alchemy. And so alchemy is at the heart of magic. It signifies the transformation, the change. So all magic really relies on some kind of transition, a change taking place. Because if you didn't want a change, you wouldn't focus on something. If you have all the money in the world, you're likely not going to focus every living, breathing moment about how to get more money, possibly, but it would be in a positive way. You already are accomplishing that, and there'd be no resistance to that. It would just be a continuation of what you already do. So the transformation that you would be seeking in that way might be something else entirely. Maybe you just can't get close to people. You don't understand. Why am I not bonding to people? I want a loved one in my life, and I can't seem to attract one, and yet money's no problem at all. So you see, that person will have a bigger draw to the area they want the transformation in than an area that is already successfully working for them. And we all go through this. We find the area where we're driven to use magic to accomplish something, or to use a prayer, to use a meditation or affirmation, some kind of practice. We find that we're drawn to do that in areas that we seek a change, in which we want to see a change, a transformation, or a transition. So alchemy, that's what it's all about, is the change, the transformation. Now, at the highest level, when you see high magicians and high magical alchemists, what they begin really working on is internal change, the alchemy of the soul. And so once they have learned through a variety of ways which things work, which things don't, what kinds of methods prompt transformation, they can begin to apply these methods to their very own soul. And this is really the truth that underlies the whole principle of alchemy and the whole principles of magic at its heart. So that's a brief kind of, I know we've gone on longer than usual, but it's an overview of those last 4 soul lines. Now, the color that coordinates with the Magi Alchemist is violet. So we're going up in frequency here because it's a thinner, faster vibratory frequency as we start approaching those etheric bodies. And so the Magi uses a lot of mental visualization and imagination in his or her work to bring that created first on the mental planes and the spiritual planes, and to bring it into the physical planes. That's a premise too that is used across all traditions of magic. So I think if we had to think of a weakness there, maybe they can become so attached to mental pursuits and imaginative work and research, things like that, that they can lose touch with their physical bodies that need them too. And we can't just spend every day, every moment in a book or a laboratory. Our bodies really respond to walks, outside in the fresh air with the sun, or moonlight picnics, or that connection with our nature and our world and our 3D needs. And so very often what we find with the Magi is, if anything, is that balance needs to be restored, and we need to incorporate grounding exercises so that they can really have better physical health as they pursue their magical and spiritual practices. All right, so that's the 4. So we've done all 7 now in a little bit more of a detailed way. And there's far more information on each one. We could just dive in forever and ever and ever. And I'm looking forward to hearing from any of you that feel you can identify with one of the soul lines. It's exciting. We're going to be offering journal pages that correlate with the soul lines, and imagery you can use like for phone wallpapers and things. These are all coming up soon and will be available on our website. In the meantime, if you go to modernmasters.org and you land on our very first page and you scroll down to the bottom, there is a button down there, kind of an image button, and it says soul lines on it. Now, if you click there, it'll take you to a page where all the 7 soul lines are listed. And you can read more, click on any one of those that you'd like to know more about. And when you open that page, not only will you get additional information, but at the bottom of that page, you'll also find a link to a PDF. And you are more than welcome to go there, download that PDF, and really start exploring these soul lines and figure out for yourself, which soul line describes me best? What motivates me to do magic or to develop my spiritual path? And as I have said in the previous two podcasts about this, I have found that once you discover some of your primary soul lines, you will discover these motivations and your true talents that set you apart, and you can go farther. You can do more with your skill set, and it's quite rewarding. And I have found out they stand up over time. No matter what I change out, when I change traditions or I choose to use magic, a different kind of paradigm, over the years you change, you become attracted to different things. No matter what I have changed to or examined as new interests, I always tend to use my skills back towards my primary motivations, which are found in my soul lines. So I have found that they really hold up for a lifetime, that once you identify yourself in one, two, possibly three of these being very major for you, it starts you on an excellent path of self-understanding. So I hope you'll enjoy this part of the journey. I thank you once again for listening and joining us, and I will include timestamps down in the descriptions so that you can easily find the soul line that might appeal most to you to hear about. And I hope you will enjoy your time exploring these soul lines, and I will return shortly. But I'll say goodbye for now.